Hi, this is Hridija. I'm from India and I'm currently doing my PhD research in Amsterdam, the Vrije Universiteit. I'm 26 years old and this video is about my healing experience with Shaman Rakhee. And in order to describe the whole experience about the 3 days retreat that I went through, I'd like to first give you a little bit of an idea about the mental state that I was in when I met Shaman Rakhee. Now, it was, I believe, a very toxic kind of a mental state, very suffocating, something that would make me feel like I'm choking a lot. And this was manifested from various fear, and a lot of it triggered because of this of observing this busyness of the world, this very mechanical way of life, this anxiety about the meaninglessness, and this feeling of being completely lost in these various ruptures and developments that are happening in this century, with a lot of structures breaking down, be it political, social, intellectual. And I was doing quite well in my life. I was still doing well professionally when I was going through this state, but this chase for more and more technology and everything kind of created a very disenchanted atmosphere and put me in a very severe burnout, depression kind of mental state, where my body started reacting to it, and I would feel nausea, dizziness at very unpredictable times, get panic attacks, and every day would be like one big duration of hell. And during such desperate times, I sent out a couple of emails at a lot of places, but it was my email with to Shaman Rakhee that resonated the most. And remember, she replied the next day, and although my financial states were in quite a mess, she was really, really kind and helpful to make an arrangement in that aspect. And I'm really grateful that I could even start my journey with her in a week or so after mentioning the urgency of my state. And in fact, I did not even have to emphasize on the urgency of my state, and she was empathetic and sensitive enough to absorb it, to actually understand the urgency of my situation on her own. Now, what I'm going to say is, this is a very different kind of a healing experience. It is not the same as engaging in the so-called popular spiritual culture. It is not the same as somebody lecturing you about positivity all the time. And it is very different in the sense that we must first acknowledge and respect that this is a knowledge that belongs to a different culture and demands, and what is actually needed is the same kind of validity that we give to modern science. I don't get the point. Myself, coming from a very science and engineering kind of a background, I never got the point about invalidating other types of knowledge, other conceptual frameworks that exist in other different cultures, and a lot of ancient cultures also. With Shaman Rakhee, what we find is the fruit of these cultures in a very medicinal form, when she is actually taking you through the healing experience. She's using her experience of knowledge, her discipline, her practice over the years to actually perform the task of surgery over your spirit, to revive that dying part of yourself. Now, the conceptual framework of the knowledge that Shaman Rakhee engages in is much wider than what our modern science is engaged in, because modern science is quite new and there are new methods of inquiry always being developed, and a lot of old ideas, new ideas always being challenged, and we haven't in science we haven't yet reached the level of understanding that these knowledge from other cultures may have. But not to compare, but I would say like this is just a different kind of knowledge with different kind of concepts about man and the world. And when the most important thing is that I personally think that this alternative knowledge is much wider in its spectrum than modern science, and this is my personal opinion. uh, so here we don't see the body as a machine, we don't see objects just as objects, without sacredness. Here what is important is the union of that connection between us and the world. And what is important in Shaman Ra's practice is actually transcending this very horizontal sphere of experiencing life and understanding the vertical aspect where you look into your connections with your ancestors as well. We are we cannot discard that connection and kind of feel rootless, because if there is one thing which is important in these extremely changing times, in these times when everything is in rapid transition and old forms are breaking to create new forms of structures, what is most important during this change is to be rooted. And this feeling of being rooted is what gives every individual strength and the hope that we can all integrate all these changes in experiences that is happening, and we can come up with new seeds of experience. So these are the few things that we must understand before we proceed into the kind of knowledge that Shaman Ra uses to heal a person. So my personal experience has been a 3-day retreat where I was completely in her care at her home, safe, secure, just blindly trusting my whole self to her. And it has been worthwhile, because I remember that the journey started when, as soon as I entered the house, there was a beautiful, sacred, loving atmosphere, and Shaman Ra's husband Yorgi was the next day playing the flute, and there was drumming in the opening ceremony, and there was this most important this underlying intention and feeling of compassion, love, gratefulness, thankfulness, which first and foremost it helps us to invite in the sacredness that exists in us and in everything around us. Because what we have done all this time is that we have used and we have utilized our realities, our everything, the things around us, and we have perceived everything as a thing or an object to such an extent that we have killed the sacredness in the world around us, and we have at the same time killed the sacredness in ourselves. And I think, based on what I experienced in my retreat, the first step was to revive this sacredness through a communication of love and respect in just being in the world. And this is not something that can be really taught through lectures or to just listening, but it's a kind of dedicated practice. And what the key components of the two key components of the healing practice was the realignment phase and the mind healing. And I remember, like, all during the retreat, every day I would have this whole session of realignment and mind healing. And realignment was mainly when Shaman Ra would use her expertise and her knowledge and her practice of operating this spiritual surgery on you, using her, even like there were other elements involved in the process, such as plant oils and understanding the energies of the body and how your spirit reacts with the energies of the body. And there was this whole framework where it was not just that someone giving you a drug or a natural herb and you go into some trance state and realize something. No, this was a much smooth and much more reasonable procedure to actually bring in a union of those broken parts in ourselves. And when I say broken parts, I don't mean like broken parts of a machine, but it's like those organic parts which are integral to our whole self. And those aspects, those energies, and it's kind of bringing in a balance within yourself. And she does this through her own expertise, own knowledge. Like she is a doctor in her field, and being a patient, probably we don't understand how she is doing it, but she is using her expertise and knowledge and all that she has learned to actually operate on the patient. And and through every session of realignment, you'd feel a change in your own energies. You'd feel a different state of mind, because of course the mind and body isn't really separate. So anything changes with the body, there's change in the mind and state of mind. And as the realignment state actually makes the body and mind ready for the mind healing phase, which actually pushes the individual to a kind of another state of mind, let's say a slightly higher but an intermediate kind of state of mind, which the main purpose of which is to awaken the healer in you. You know, that dead part, the dead part which you've been ignoring because you've been so consumed in the world, you couldn't hear that voice. And the dead part which has the power on its own to heal yourself. The dead part which performs all the task of processing the trauma, the pain that has been passed to you by your ancestors, triggered by your circumstances. That part which can process all this, behind the curtain. It's like a backstage operation. So that if the backstage is set now, okay, you will be already set to perform. And Shaman Ra, using her expertise, activates this backstage setup in a way. Also, except for this operational process, there are some more elements, for example, very, very integral to her work, which is, like I mentioned about the sacredness, she doesn't just pluck a plant and uses it into an oil. No, the main thing about her practice is the love and respect that is carried in her intentions, even when she is using an element of nature. There is the relation that she shares with the plant, which grows at the back of the garden, and there is this mutual help which has been spoken about with the plant, that agreed with the plant, that we see that everything is coming together towards a common purpose. As I said, there is this intention, her state of mind, which plays probably the central role in her practice when she is trying to awaken, to communicate and to awaken the healer in you, and to communicate to the other spirit realms, to communicate to your ancestors, to communicate to other realms of existence from where help could be retrieved to actually take care of the person suffering. And the whole thing, like I said, takes care of the little details. So you'd find probably in your lovely experience Shaman Ra preparing this nice little sacred breakfast to you, where she's using exactly the elements that she feels your gut or your stomach needs, to participate in the healing process. So she makes sure in a very careful, observed way that every cell of your body, every vital element of your soul and of your existence is together contributing and participating in this whole experience. So now with all this happening, there are usually it ends with the closing ceremony, where there is again the gratefulness and thankfulness that is offered to your ancestors and the spirits who have helped you in the process. But most important is not just forgetting about all that and coming back to old patterns after this. And in fact, it is kind of difficult to come back to old habit after this, because in 3 days when she has initiated the healing process already, then it's quite smooth and easy when you are picking up on these new habits, picking up on this practice of perceiving the world in a different way, and therefore and acting towards the world in a very different way. So once this relation between you and the world changes, because and each of and when this relation is first of all healed in a way that parts of those parts which were integral to for you to pass through many experiences, intense experiences in life, when those things are alive again, I think, like, the most beautiful part is that you don't even need to go to her after that. The most beautiful thing is that you are able to take care of yourself. Your soul is able to activate this healing, activate a kind of understanding every time you go through an anxious experience or you go through a very intense, painful experience. And although obviously the 3 days is only activation, and then you go back to your lifestyle, but every time you're sleeping, you're having this series of intense dreams, and you wake up and you still don't feel tired after the intense night. And the dream thing happens for a few days because of the all processing that happens backstage. But after a while, when you are slowly, bit by bit, that part of you is gaining strength, reviving. You know that you are on the right path. You know that you'll be able to stand up on your own again. And I feel like this alternative kind of knowledge, as medicinal practice, can't just be done by teaching someone a course, or can't just be explained theoretically, or just by doing a workshop. It's something, I think people like Shaman Ra are really, really rare, where the whole basis of this knowledge is so different. It's not like gaining knowledge, but experiencing knowledge directly. and I feel I've been really, really privileged and lucky that I've met her. Also, I think, also now when I look back, I see that probably the dying part of me, who crying out to reach out to a person, who could heal me. Probably my soul, my ancestors in that process did help me to even make this encounter happen, to make this reality of this healing experience happen. And therefore, I'm also thankful to my soul, my ancestors. I'm really grateful to every cell of me and every element of this universe and Shaman Ra who have come together to make this whole process happen. And I will not say it like it has already happened, but I feel it has just been activated a few months back and it's still happening, and I'm excited to see how it goes. But yeah, I hope someday when you're in trouble and you need someone to hold your hand and take you through this journey, somebody strong, somebody you can rely on, somebody honest, truthful, compassionate, you know then I feel like Shaman Ra would be the person to do that for you. So yeah.